Hi, I'm Justin Dean with DeWitt Property Management, and today I want to talk to you about evictions in St. Petersburg, Florida. You know, I get calls a lot from landlords that are self-managing their properties, and I hear stories about they need help, tenant hasn't paid rent in a couple of months, and they don't know what to do. First thing I'll say is, I'm not a lawyer. If you're unsure about what to do when it comes to an eviction, you need to consult a lawyer. I'm just going to cover some basics about an eviction and timelines. So the first thing you should know is that you don't have to have a lawyer. You, as a landlord, are able to file an eviction on your own. It is important that if you own this property in a LLC or not in your own name, that it does get more complicated, and you might need to have a lawyer that you cannot represent yourself because you don't own the property. It's in a corporation's name. So outside of that, I just will stress that make sure you know the laws, and if you don't, get a lawyer. All right. Timeline when it comes to an eviction. First thing you have to do before you can file anything with the county court is that you have to post a 3-day. And that's the basic step when a tenant hasn't paid rent, is you have to post a 3-day notice. And it's very important that you know how to post a proper 3-day notice, what money you can include on the demand letter, when the tenant has to pay by, and what will happen if they don't pay by that time. So proper 3-day notice, again, if you don't have one, you can contact me, contact an attorney, but it has to be posted on the door or handed to the tenant. You can only post it on the door if the tenant's not home. And so 3-day notice is the first step. Once that 3-day notice, the 3 days have passed, then you can file an eviction. Now, I just want to say that all these different timelines are business days. We never count weekends or holidays, so things can really stretch out if you're not careful on following things and making sure you file things and post things at the appropriate time. So once 3-day notice has lapsed and if the tenant hasn't paid, you can start the filing process. Now, there's several steps to filing. It's not one file and then you wait. You have to file the initial filing for the eviction. It has to be provided to the tenant, and then that tenant, or through a process server, typically, and that tenant has an opportunity to respond, and they have several days to respond to the eviction filing. And based off of whether that tenant responds or not can really extend the time that an eviction how long it'll take to evict someone from your rental. So, you have the initial filing, you have the 3-day notice, and again, I just stress, if you don't know this process or you're unsure, get an attorney. So the bottom line is, once the whole process takes place, an eviction is going to take about a month. There's really no way to speed it up. It can drag out further, especially if things weren't filed correctly or if the tenant has filed a response and the judge wants to have a hearing. And so the longer this goes, the worse things can get. Oftentimes the tenant doesn't respond, especially if it's a non-payment of rent. And that's, I guess, is what I'm mainly talking about, is a simple eviction for non-payment of rent. And so some advice I have is, once you've gone through this filing, and whether it's through an attorney or whatever, is make sure you see it through all the way to the end. And what the end means is that a sheriff has actually shown up at the property, completed the eviction, whether the tenant is there or not, and finalized the eviction. A lot of times a tenant takes off prior to a sheriff showing up. And I've talked to owners where they've decided they're going to go into their property and start getting it ready for the next tenant or whatever, and they never bother to get the sheriff to finalize the eviction. That's a big mistake. There's a lot of pitfalls to that. Make sure you finalize the eviction. Some other things to think about is, there's other types of evictions. There's eviction because someone isn't complying with their lease or some rule that's broken. And again, the more complicated it gets, the more important it is to get an attorney involved. But if you have some questions about what to do, when to evict, how to evict, feel free to contact me. I'd be happy to answer those questions or talk to you about managing properties in St. Petersburg in general. I'm Justin Dean with DeWitt Property Management.